the phrase, know you're enough, tie that into this world that's constantly pushing for more, how we can embrace that mindset. A little bit of a hard left turn from where we were, but
no,
I know it's important to you.
Absolutely. And let me just connect a couple dots. So we haven't really talked a ton about the essence of this work. You mentioned mindset, but this concept of the flux mindset. So we've been
Please connect the dots.
We've been talking around it a little bit.
Yeah.
And at the essence, so I mentioned change management. For me, it's not just the change management, it's your mindset. It's your change mindset, which I call your flux mindset. And so we can go into that, but I'll kind of leave that because it's really at the core. And it is this ability to see all change as opportunity. It goes deeper than that, but that's the essence. And then, so you've got this first step of, to thrive in a world in flux, you want to be able to open a flux mindset. And that's really acknowledging that your relationship to change can improve. And then people are like, okay, I can get my head around this mindset, but then like, what do I do? Like, how do I put this into action? What are the practical, tangible, tactical kind of how-tos? And then I have these things called the 8 Flux superpowers, which you can think of as practices, habits, skills, one of which is this idea of knowing you're enough. So people who know they're enough, and we'll get into riffing on the language again, are better able to navigate change. So let's come back to just this idea of more, and that we live in a society today in which we are, if I can say, like, we are obsessed with more. And I don't just mean more money or more power. It's more clicks and more likes and more cars and more clothes and like more everything. And there is this almost inherent belief that more is automatically better. And I'm not saying that more is bad at all. I'm just saying that this obsession with more is getting us into a lot of trouble. And for a lot of people, the younger you track, the more this is the case. But this notion that like more has to be better, there's a belief, a creeping belief, but pretty pervasive belief for many people that they will never have enough, do enough, earn enough, fundamentally be enough. And so you're like, where does this come from and how do we fix it? Now, I'm coming at all of this from the lens of change and uncertainty. And the fact is, the easiest way I can put it, when we are always after more, we will never have enough. And if you think about by design, it can't work because you're after more. What happens? You imagine you get more. Then what? You need more. Like have the more. And you just keep kicking that can down the road. And again, you can think about this on many different metrics, right? Physical possessions, but also just notoriety and who we are. When you are after more, you'll never find enough. But when you know you're enough, and we'll come back to this word enough, when you know you're enough, and that's both Y-O-U-R as well as you are enough.
Correct.
Like fundamentally, you are enough. Both, and that's intentional. I am riffing on the words intentionally. That you immediately begin to see abundance where before you saw scarcity. And you begin to see things you'd missed before. And for me, again, lens of change and uncertainty, when you know you're enough, you are almost by default better equipped to navigate change. You don't have the hang up between I'm defined only if I have more. And what you find is you're much more nimble, much more agile, much more able to pivot to new circumstances. So I'll pause there because I know some of that might sound a bit abstract.
Yeah, no, it's not. I think I would take the case that it also, it provides a sense of peace, or that it provides access to peace, right?
Yeah.
Because on the one hand, if you're in this paradigm of it's never enough or you're never enough, both spellings, all spellings, all plays on words intentionally, that you lack affinity, you lack love, you lack creativity, you lack energy, all those kind of things. And the inverse of that, if we can come back to a handstand, is say, hey, wait a minute, I'm just going to declare it and live from that point of departure that I am enough and I'm enough and live from that vitality, creativity, energy, connection, all those aspects of one's life expand, or at least you have the access to expanding it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of this know you're enough, it does, to your point, it revolves around there's a sense of peace, there's a sense of balance, there's a sense of harmony. There's when you think about enough, it's not too much and it's not too little. It's enough. It's in harmony. It's really essentially that well-being. And what's fascinating, Seth, and I think you probably know this, but many people don't. This idea that, or this assumption I find out in society, people sort of assume it's always been this way, that like we've always been about more. The fact is, no. This obsession with more is a very recent phenomenon in history. And we can really trace it back, again, not to get too wonky, but the advent of consumer mass marketing and a consumer-based economy really did something to all of us that's not really that helpful. But if you look historically, yes, there have always been people with more and with less. And you had kings with a lot, you had pauper, you had inequality, for example. But for most of human history, the goal was not the pursuit of more. Goal was to have enough to care for yourself and your family. And anything that was more than enough was like excess baggage.
Yeah.
You didn't want it.
Yeah. It
right.
It was a drag.
It was dragging. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the metaphor of like a journey, and yes, you might want provisions for an emergency. That's always a good thing to have. But beyond that, it's like, it's just baggage. And so this idea, I ask people sometimes, and we'll do this again in like keynotes and stuff, where like what's in your bag, this metaphorical bag. And if you're taking a trip, yes, you want to make sure that you have enough underwear, you have a warm jacket, like you want enough. You don't want
I'll leave the shampoo and conditioner behind. That's me. Okay.
And then you've brought up a really interesting point. When we're about enough, you start looking at sharing differently. You start looking at sharing the load, sharing the weight, who needs what. But this idea that you want enough, but anything more than enough when you're traveling is excess baggage. Who wants an extra piece of luggage? No one. No one wants to drag that along. But if you apply that to your journey of life, are you living within that enoughness, right? Because I think so much we've over-indexed on the physical stuff, like we more everything, but we've often under-indexed on the human stuff. So like you have enough love in your life, enough dignity, enough integrity, and you start recalibrating those things. And we find that's a really helpful exercise for many people.